Hi, Anna. You ready to go? I'm not on my A game. No, I'm about to see you. Yeah. I think everybody's used to me messing up.
Thank you. We recognize you as the official mic handler.
Not like church, ain't it? Everybody gets quiet when we're starting. Except I'm not the preacher. Yeah. Is everybody here that needs to be here? All right. Good morning. To recognize, you might ought to raise your hand, but we have Jeremy and Mandy around to hand in. There they are. Raise your hand. They got the mics and everything for you to speak if you want to speak. And I can't even see what your name's across there, so you might, if you recognize me. But I want to say good morning. We do have a quorum this morning. That's good to hear. And I'm going to start the call to order of the Transportation Policy Board, and thank each one of y'all for being here today. And the first order of business we didn't move into in your packets is the minutes from the previous meeting. I'll entertain a motion. We got a motion by by Ken Moore. You second it, Ken? Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? The minutes are filed. Thank you. At this time we do the public comments. If there's anyone here who would like to speak to the Transportation Policy Board, please come up and state your name. Also, comments can be emailed to GNRC.org. So is anyone here who would like to speak to the Transportation Policy Board? Seeing none, we'll move on to our business. We'll start with our action items. I'm going to introduce Anna for our first amending the Transportation Improvement Program. Anna?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 5 amendments to the 2023-2026 Transportation Improvement Program for your review and potential adoption today. These amendments would be proposing to add $11.8 million to our Transportation Improvement Program. The first 3 amendments that we have on the slate are all related to funds being added to new projects and existing projects that have been provided by TDOT through their Transportation Alternatives Program. The first of those proposed amendments is requested by the City of Gallatin for their Vol State Gap Trail Phase 2B project. This was a project that they had applied for funding from TDOT, from their TAP program, in a previous award cycle and received partial funding. TDOT was able to come back and provide additional funding to this project, so they're now adding the fully funded project to the TIP. The next project is a similar situation to that Gallatin project. It's a request from Mount Pleasant for their Mount Pleasant Downtown Revitalization Phase 2 project. They're also requesting to add the project to the TIP now that it has been fully funded by TDOT's TAP office. Same situation, they received a partial previous award and have now received enough funds to add the project to the TIP. Following that is a request from Thompson Station for their Thompson Station Multimodal Connectivity Phase 3 project. This was an existing project in the TIP that has experienced cost overruns in the construction phase. They're ready to move forward with construction and made a request to the TDOT TAP office to see whether additional funds were available, and they were able to receive some additional funds for construction. So the request is to add that funding to the TIP. Following that, we have a request from WEGO, specifically the Regional Transportation Authority, for their WEGO Star Miscellaneous Support Equipment and Passenger Amenities project. They're requesting to shift previously identified 5307 and 5337 funds that were on other projects in the TIP to this project just due to some change in priorities and the need to get some funds obligated. And then following that, we have a request from WEGO, specifically the Nashville NTA, for their North Nashville Transit Center project. They are requesting to add funds that were previously identified for NTA, but were unprogrammed to this project for additional needs for the transit center construction. And if anybody has any questions about the 5 proposed amendments on the agenda today, I'm happy to take those.
Okay, any questions for Anna from anyone? Seeing none, we'll step back from our policy board and open this back up to the public. Anyone in the public like to comment on these amendments we're about to vote on? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing then. I take it from Michael, we're voting on all these at one time, right? If there's no discussion, I'll entertain a motion. I got a motion by Mayor Moore, and I heard a second. All in favor of these amendments, vote aye. Anyone opposed? Amendments passed. Thank you.
All right, Mayor Vogel, just one more item before we move on to the next agenda item. I'm going to turn it over to our TDOT representatives for just an update on the state of the State Transportation Improvement Program, as well as a related update related to the state CMAQ program.
Thanks, Anna. Good morning, everybody. I think you may have heard from some correspondence that our that the STIP had been sent back to us for a number of reasons, predominantly the lack of fiscal constraint for the CMAQ projects. We have been working with Federal Highway and with our TDOT folks and CMAQ recipients to bring that into fiscal constraint. I think you've seen this paper that it was handed out today that shows the actions that we had to take to make sure that we stayed within our range of fiscal years and the allocations that came from that. For the most part, the majority of the reasons for moving these were 3 things. One was how the projects were listed in the TIP with their respective phases. So PE and construction, for example, was in the same year, and that was causing a little bit of a problem. Obviously, that more than likely won't happen for larger construction projects. So having $90 million over what we were allowed to have in fiscal 23 and a really small amount in the other years gave us that ability to move them. Another thing that we had was a couple of data entry errors. We had one project that was listed as $1 million that got coded as $10 million. So some of that was just a fat finger entry. And then the final one is really just the progress of these projects. Some of these projects, when you received your recipient letter, mentioned, we would like to have these done within 5 years, and some of them have taken a little bit longer, but we're not canceling them. We're honoring those and moving those forward and putting those in those other years. So I think hopefully that in a nutshell describes what one of the larger reasons why the STIP was not adopted at the beginning. We have received a conditional approval from Federal Highway on the new allocation of these CMAQ funds, so we should be ready to go and get this adopted fairly certain. Pam, I don't know if there's, as far as the date of...
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Melanie Murphy. I'm a transportation planner at FWA Tennessee Division. We're meeting with programming today at, I think, 3 p.m. to chat about the STIP submittal, so we expect it to be submitted very soon.
Any questions? See if I can help answer that. Anyone got any questions? Thank you. Anna? Okay, you ready? Okay. Gosh, where we at? We done voted on that, right? So, okay, we're ready to move on to our item B, our adopting our performance targets. These are the next two items that are together, and I'm going to recognize Daniel Cabarella. Is Daniel here? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Vogel. Good morning, everybody. I'll be presenting on two sets of performance measure targets today. First is infrastructure condition, and the second is reliability. So as you may remember, through our safety target setting process, target setting is a federal requirement for performance-based planning, which was decided on in MAP 21 back in 2015, federal legislation requiring MPOs and DOTs to assess the performance of the transportation system and set statewide or regional targets for improvement. So as an MPO has to demonstrate how transportation investments make progress towards establishing these targets. From a statewide basis, if these targets are not met, the state can't flex certain federal grant funds away from their intended purpose to address performance. So this is just a list of all of the performance measures that we have to set. Some have an annual update, some have a biannual update. So safety is annually, but these two, infrastructure condition and system performance, have biannual updates. I will mention that the decision to support TDOT's statewide target or establish regional targets is guided by the RTP process, or Regional Transportation Plan, which was adopted in February 2021. So any decisions to go with regional targets are best made through the update of each RTP. So starting with infrastructure condition, it's broken up between 4 pavement condition measures and 2 bridge condition measures. So the percent of the interstate pavement in good condition, the percent of the interstate pavement in poor condition, percent of non-interstate pavement in good condition, and then same thing in poor condition. And then bridge condition is just the percent of bridge deck area in good condition, and then the percent of bridge deck area in poor condition. So here's just a network of the pavement network statewide. These are state targets that we're deciding on today. So just wanted to show you the statewide network. And then this is pavement condition statewide. Pavement that is in poor quality is going to be in red, fair quality in yellow, and then good quality is in gray. I'm not sure if you can see that on this picture. And then here's a call out of our region. As you can see, sort of the state arterials as well as the interstates. You can see some of them are in poor condition and fair condition. And then this is a statewide map of all the bridges. Probably looks crazy on the screen, but the next slide will tell you which ones are in bad condition. These are bridges in critical, so the critical condition bridges are going to be in blue, and then the poor condition bridges are going to be in red. And then here's just a call out for our region. There's only 2 critical condition bridges in our region, and then lots of poor condition bridges in our region. And then here's just a list of the statewide targets that you'll be voting on today. Again, those 4 pavement targets as well as the 2 bridge targets. TDOT has set targets both for 2-year and 4-year periods. And as you can see, for those first 2, they're saying that it will begin the pavement quality, so that baseline is just the current pavement condition, and then that 2-year target and 4-year target are what they are aspiring towards, which is for the pavement quality to get worse. And then, as you can see, for bridges, it's a similar story there. And then for system performance, these are travel time reliability measures. So reliability is really just a measure of how predictable travel times are and how they're impacted by recurring and non-recurring congestion. Recurring congestion is really just capacity related, so your commutes, regular trips that you're taking, and then non-recurring are events that are less predictable, so crashes or weather. And so those three reliability measures that we're voting on today are the percent of the person miles traveled on the interstate that are reliable, the percent of the person miles traveled on the non-interstate that are reliable, as well as freight truck travel time. So this is really just saying if your trip takes 10 minutes on average, that's your expected reliability. If it takes 15 minutes or more, then it's considered unreliable. And then these are statewide maps of those three measures. So interstate reliability, non-interstate reliability, and freight reliability. As you can see, in that first one, it's sort of really those interstates near urban areas, so that inner core, as well as you can see 65 has some reliability issues as well. And then the non-interstate reliability, the non-interstate roadways that are going in and out of urban areas, you can see are probably the most important to pay attention to in terms of reliability. And then a similar story for freight reliability. Here are those three performance measures. Similar to the infrastructure condition, the state targets are projecting for that reliability to get worse over time for all three measures. So for that freight truck travel time, that's an index. So the closer to 1 is better, and closer to 1.5 is worse. So there are those targets. Staff recommendation is to adopt these statewide targets for infrastructure condition and system reliability, and then consider regional target setting as we conduct our update of the next regional transportation plan. So we can consider regional targets then, but for this update, adopting the state targets. And I'll turn it back to Mayor Vogel, unless anyone has any questions.
Okay, any questions for Daniel? Mayor Moore.
I'm looking at the bridge deck areas in poor condition, and the baseline is 5%, and the 2-year target and the 4-year target is 6%. That means we aren't doing anything. Is that what that says?
Yes, the target for poor increasing in percentage means that the target is going to get worse, essentially is what that means. For poor condition, for bridge condition.
And the other question I had was, you know, with all these targets we're setting, and most of them are reductions in the percentage over time, and is there some kind of funding mechanism that's tied to that, or is it just the regular old money we get, and we're going to be short of money and not be able to reach our targets? Are they really realistic based on our ability to pay for them?
Right. I think for infrastructure condition, it's a little tougher because a lot of the funds that are used for maintenance are TDOT buckets, those TDOT groupings. But I think for reliability, this board and the region as a whole has a little more control over addressing congestion, as I'm sure you remember from the update of the RTP, as well as our congestion management process. But I think going forward, as we update the next RTP, I think what you said is important, and exploring regional targets to more accurately assess what we're aspiring towards in terms of those two performance measures, as we did with safety, might be the right course of action, depending on what this board wants to do.
Mayor Moore, those are good questions. I remember the first month I got elected, I had a bridge fall in that was supposed to be a passing grade. Yeah, and all I could tell people, when you gonna fix it? When you gonna fix it? Yeah, but didn't nobody get hurt? You know, so, yeah, good questions. Yeah, I was trying to look the bright side. Tough questions, ain't it, Daniel? Good. Anyone else? Okay, if not, I'll ask for a motion for 2309, adopting the performance targets for infrastructure condition. Thank you. You need a second. Thank you. All in favor, if there's any more discussion, all in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. All right, we'll move ahead to 2310, adopting performance targets for system reliability. I need a motion. Okay, need a second. Thank you, Mayor Moore. I'm going to remember that. Yeah, I'll help you out one day. All right, if you're in favor of this motion, vote aye. Anyone opposed? So moved. That motion passes. We're very tentative this morning. Okay, we'll move on to our transportation planning work program. I'm going to turn this over to Sean. You ready, Sean?
Thank you, Chair. So the next item that we have is our transportation planning work program we've been developing over the course of this year. It's also known as the Unified Planning Work Program through the federal guidance, but we develop a 2-year transportation planning work program and usually update it annually as things change. But what it contains is it identifies all the federally funded planning activities that are going to be carried out within the region. It also identifies a number of planning activities that are going to be carried out with state and local funds as well throughout our region, whether it's comp plans, bike ped plans, transit activities from transit providers. And we're scheduled to adopt this document July 19th at our next board meeting. We currently have a draft that's available for review. There's a link in your packet, and we've sent that over to TDOT for their review before it then moves on to federal agencies. So just some of the key components that kind of drive the development of our transportation planning work program. Obviously, we're carrying out a lot of data collection, analysis, outreach, and engagement, and then also identifying some funding opportunities that we have to sub-allocate through our various programs. And, a couple of the things that drive that, we talk a lot about safety and the rise in serious injuries and fatalities within the region that we're trying to kind of combat that trend through various efforts. The worsening traffic congestion as, we've kind of rebounded from the pandemic, and our Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday weekday commutes are worse than they were back in 2019. And then, limited funding and financing options remain a top priority, and you've indicated that in surveys that you've taken to us, and our strong dependency on federal funds to implement a lot of these projects. And then lastly, kind of the increasingly important priority has been the affordability and housing choice, given the significant increases that we've seen in housing prices throughout the region and the impact that's had on workers and residents. And so kind of ways that we've kind of tried to address that, not only have addressed but are working to as part of this next development process. Created a lot of data dashboards, applications, and tools to support, not only decision making at the regional level, but also through your local planning activities. A couple of examples that you guys might recall using is our month-to-date crash dashboard that kind of takes our safety targets and then tracks those month by month to see, how we're on pace to either, meet those targets or not meet those targets. Also, we have a congestion dashboard now that is similar in kind of tracking month-to-month trends, and then also being able to compare that back to previous years. And then also our non-motorized safety index that kind of takes the crash data and looks beyond that to see where areas might be unsafe for pedestrians and bicyclists across the region. So those are a couple of examples. We have also formed our project delivery task force over the past 2 years that has met half a dozen times, and we're looking to schedule our next meeting to discuss some of the recommendations from that work over the past couple of years. And that's been really beneficial to have not only a diverse group of stakeholders that are all involved in this process from different angles, but is also kind of focused on a lot of these is not only delivering projects faster to address safety and congestion, but also figuring out ways to be more creative in utilizing that limited funding to advance these projects and make sure that funding is not a hurdle to moving forward. We also completed a successful federal certification review in August 2022 and adopted our current TIP, the federal fiscal years 2023 to 2026 Transportation Improvement Program in November, and hope for that to be live once the STIP is approved. And then just some upcoming priorities to continue to address some of these key issues over the next 2 years. We're looking to even be more involved in kind of tackling the safety issue by kind of taking the model of the Project Delivery Task Force and forming a regional safety task force. Our staff meets with a number of groups that are trying to tackle the safety issue, from the education element to enforcement to the engineering side. And this, I think, will provide an opportunity to kind of bring those folks together and really work kind of transitioning from that data analysis side to the strategies that we can be implementing to turn the course and the trend of fatalities and serious injuries. Also, housing being a component now of the bipartisan infrastructure law, that we want to be making strides to integrate housing better into a lot of the investment decisions, particularly our transportation investment decisions. And so as we kind of kick off the update of our regional transportation plan, I think that's an opportunity to bring a lot of this housing data into the mix. And then we also have we'll be conducting our regional growth management study that will help kind of identify additional, address some of the limited funding options of, the growth and development has been very fast, and identifying ways for the transportation investments to keep up with some of the residential and commercial development that's coming into your communities. And so looking to kick off that effort and explore some opportunities to better equip our local governments to handle that growth and development. And then lastly, just leveraging additional state funding with the Transportation Modernization Act that was recently passed. There's a huge influx of state dollars that are coming into play, and so identifying opportunities to not only leverage that with some of our federal formula funds that come down to us, but also maybe utilizing that to get an opportunity to apply for some federal discretionary grant opportunities as well. So I think those are all kind of some exciting priorities coming up over the next 2 years. And then just to give you kind of a glimpse into the funding that we're talking about through our Transportation Planning Work Program, on the federal side through our Consolidated Planning Grant and our SPR funding, it's about $3 million, and so 80% of that money is coming from federal funds, and then it's being matched with state side on the Consolidated Planning Grant, and then our local dues on the for both the Consolidated Planning Grant and the SPR funds. And so it breaks out to about 80% federal, 5% state, and 15% local dues, for a combined total of about $3.7 million each year. And then lastly, our schedule. We kicked this off at the beginning of 2023. Where we are now is presenting the draft document that's available at the link on this page. And we'll be going through the state and federal review, and then also releasing this for public review and comment in July prior to your adoption.
Any questions for Sean? Go.
Yeah. So, and I don't fully understand, but...
Oh, thank you. Maybe I don't fully understand how all this works. How do you include how do you get the local government input on all this as you're going through this? Are there committees? Because I'm not sure, but obviously I see the call for studies and plan review input. How do you make sure that everybody around the table gets input into this?
Yeah, so we started in January with this calls for studies and planning activities, and that's where we started with the Transportation Coordinating Committee, which is a lot of the local government staff, engineers, and planners within each of the jurisdictions. Let them know that we were kicking off a development for our work program for the next 2 years, and this is where they not only get to suggest priorities that they think we should focus on, but as part of that survey, we also had kind of what are the key issues that we should be trying to solve over the next 2 years. And then another thing that we asked them for input on too is some of the local planning activities that are being carried out within their region. And so taking that all into account, we then went through the subsequent months of trying to refine that material and then update our priority activities for the coming year. I will note that a lot of funding is dedicated to staff time through this transportation planning work program, and so there's not a ton of new money for new studies to take on throughout the region, but we are open to those ideas, and we will continue to work through the process to identify what those could look like. I think examples in the past of kind of the region utilizing those resources for regional studies has been the South Corridor Transit Study, and so that items like that take kind of a collective buy-in from the committee in order to advance those and carry those out.
Well, so let me, like on affordable housing, which is obviously a key issue, at least directly in Nashville, and will become an issue everywhere else. How do you all pull that into the study? How do you make sure that, do you work with MDHA and for national purposes and other counties to try to figure out how you tie all that stuff into studying and understanding affordable housing issues?
Yeah, and that's a kind of a new one for metropolitan planning organizations. Is the last federal transportation bill was really the first one that called out incorporating housing into the decision-making process, and so it's a little bit new for us. We've already started meeting. I know our Max Baker, our director of data and analytics, either met with Metro Housing Division or MDHA recently to start kind of having those discussions of what data is available and how can we pull that into the process. But I think one key piece that stands out to us is not only gathering and collecting that data, but then as we go through the RTP process and we get candidate projects from our local jurisdictions, is taking housing data and factoring that into the evaluation process so that there's housing criteria. So, if you are working to make progress towards solving this housing affordability issue, then maybe your project is likely to get higher priority through that ranking.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Good question. Anybody else got a question? Go ahead, Pam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess a couple of comments. That while that's true, right, the focus and the criteria is y'all's decision, right? So we need to bring in the housing conversation with a focus in transportation. This is MPO planning money. This is transportation planning money. So the decision on ranking and criteria is the board's. So you will have I would recommend that you ask what is the criteria and be sure that you are okay with how the projects are being ranked for funding, one. And secondly, Sean, can you click on that link so you can actually see what projects because this is the purpose of the conversation, right? To have a look at the planned activities list.
In terms of pulling up this document?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You want to pull that up, Daniel?
That way the board can see what kind of planning activities are being proposed.
maybe put,
we're working on the links may not be.
I'm questioning all the time, what is affordable housing? Mayor Moore, can you tell me that? That's good. That's a good question to sleep on. Yeah.
That definition gets changed.
It's, I haven't figured it out yet.
The issue is the preceding WWW, I believe.
oh, okay. Well, I know how to find it another way too.
Yeah, so this is the draft UPWP document, and you'll see there's a couple of different sections within here. The first is kind of a overview background, and then we'll get into kind of the planning issues that we talked about. And then once you get to, I know you're scrolling through these, but there's kind of 5 main tasks in here, and that kind of breaks out the different activities across not only like the administration element of things of hosting a lot of these meetings that we convene throughout the region, but then you get into some of our regional planning efforts, which consist of a lot of the work that we do in coordination with partners across the region through our target setting process, working with TDOT and a number of other committees on carrying out some of the local, supporting some of the local efforts that are carried out throughout the region. We also have on kind of the third task is more focused on some of the TIP transportation programming work and developing the TIP as well as maintaining the amendments and that sort of thing. And then I think the next one is focused predominantly on some of our research and analytic activities that we'll be working on over the course of the 2 years, and a lot of those tools that we're developing, applications, data analysis. And then I think the last one is focused predominantly on like our communication and outreach, and a lot of the efforts to not only fulfill our the activities within our public participation plan, but also some of the engagement activities that will be carried out over the coming years. And then you'll see some of the, in task 6 is really more of where we transition to a lot of the activities that are going to be carried out, not necessarily with federal funds, but be carried out from partners such as TDOT, transit agencies, and local governments, either plans and studies that they have in the works now or plan to carry out over the coming years.
Do you all have the staff up to do this? Is there money that comes in that help pay for this?
Yeah, so I mean, the task 1 is just the program administration aspect of things is part of the requirement of NPOs is developing the work program, and so you'll see mention to the time involved in developing and maintaining this document kind of cited in that first task. This is one of our core products in addition to our transportation improvement program that guides a lot of the programming and investment, and then regional transportation plan being another core product that looks out that 25-year horizon and really kind of sets the vision and goals and objectives for the region.
So as we look through the some of the local work you guys do, that needs to go in there as well, comp plan updates and that kind of stuff. Is that part of this, or?
Yeah, I think the idea behind that is there's varying levels of detail that we can incorporate here, but the idea is that if we have a good sense of all of the local planning activities that are going on throughout the region, then we can make more informed decisions at the regional level of not trying to duplicate efforts, or maybe be able to fund complementary efforts. I think one example of that is a couple of communities in recent years have studied impact fees kind of independently at the city level, and so I think the regional growth management study is an opportunity to kind of, if it's something that's of interest to multiple communities, then we can tackle that at the regional level and be beneficial to multiple communities across the region.
There you go, Mayor Callis.
I'm sorry, thank you. As you go through the process and everybody discusses carbon reduction and EVs and all the things along the way, and a charging station infrastructure that we've talked about from the TDOT side, we bring in TVA into all of these because, if they're not upsizing and expanding, none of this is going to matter anyway. So I'm just curious if we're going to be bringing them in to have some discussions in this room. I think would be very helpful to us. We can talk about it in theory, but if they're not ready to supply it, it kind of falls apart. And it may be nice to have some of those representatives come and talk to us about what their plan is for expansion of the load that they're going to have to carry when some of these plans come to be. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think TDOT has been working and leading a lot of the electrification efforts, and you guys might have more interaction with TVA through the TEVI plan and upcoming grant opportunities.
Thank you, Mayor Callis. That was pretty good. I think Michael wants to say something.
Yes, sir. Just in regard to Mayor Callis' comment, the other thing that we'll ultimately want to incorporate into the UPWP as more details come online is the EPA funding that's been made available for climate pollution reduction. Our MSA is receiving $1 million to create basically a short-term and longer-term plan to address carbon reduction, both stationary and mobile sources. And so the EPA funding, that $1 million will qualify the region for $4.6 billion in implementation grants that would be doled out competitively nationwide, and the transportation sector will be eligible for those as well. And so you've got the carbon reduction initiative on the transportation side with TDOT for a highway, then you've also got the EPA looking at the same topic and willing to invest in transportation sector as well when it comes to carbon reduction and greenhouse gas emission reduction.
Yeah, I have just a quick question. I know you all just submitted this to TDOT for review. I haven't personally reviewed it yet. Are you all proposing any new internal studies in the next 2 years? Any new studies? I know, like South Corridor was one you've done in previous years. Are there any new studies? Sean?
Yeah, I think we have some in there, like the regional growth management would be a study that we would likely have an RFP go out for a consultant to support us with that effort.
Okay. Is that the only one you can recall?
I think so.
Okay.
Well, the other consultant, all the consultant activities are listed in the appendix.
But the bulk of the funding is going to model updates to prepare for the plan update.
Gotcha. That's the root of my question.
And that'll be heavily consultant driven.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Is everybody clear on that? Any more questions for Sean? Okay, we'll move on to our written reports. We got our FTA report. I'm going to introduce Pam. Are you ready to go? You got a microphone? There you go. Thank you, young man.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Excuse me. Thank you for the opportunity to visit with you today. I wanted to bring two things to your attention. There are two notices of proposed funding opportunities that are out that I think that are of interest to the members of the board. Is the Safe Streets and Roads for All, SS4A. Some of you may have already received planning grants in this first round, but there's a second round that is out right now. It'll be a total of $1.2 billion available for regional, local, and tribal initiatives to prevent roadway deaths and serious injuries. So there's two kinds of grants that you can request. One of them is planning, the other one is implementation. So with implementation, we require a self-certification that y'all have a plan in place. But if you don't have that, you can apply for funding to do the plan, and then in the subsequent rounds, ask for implementation funds. So this is the money that is only eligible for local governments, counties, tribes. The state DOTs are not eligible to apply for these funds. So the $1.2 billion will go nationally to local governments, county governments, and tribes. So applications for this next round are due on July 10th, 2023. And if you need any more information, please let me know. We're happy to point you in the direction of the website so that you can see what the criteria are and how to apply. The second notice of proposed funding opportunity that I wanted to bring to your attention is the PROTECT funding. So this is the grant money, and PROTECT stands for Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation. So this is essentially resiliency money. So while there's formula money that has been given to all the state DOTs, this is grant money that you apply for, and you can work directly with other local units of government. So for instance, if you want to get with your neighbor and apply, you can apply on your own. This is for if you've got roadways or you've got assets that tend to fail repeatedly due to weather, flooding, the different things that happen. So the applicants are states, local governments, counties, and also NPOs can apply. For that one, it is $848 million available nationwide this year. And the applications are due on August 18th. And this is the first round of NOFOs, notice of proposed funding opportunities for PROTECT. So y'all may not know a ton about that one because that one is one of the last ones to come out. So if you have questions, excuse me, please let us know. And that's all I had, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Before my voice totally goes.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Anybody got any questions for Pam, the aggravated better voice?
I know, weird.
Yeah, hey, jump on this. Anybody got any questions, Pam? All right, thank you. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Yes, sir. I can do that. I'll make sure that we get them to you, Sean, and then you can share. Okay.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Pam. All right, we'll move on to our TDOT report. I'm going to introduce, well, first I need to announce that, everybody remembers Butch Ely was here in January to share the details of the governor's bill with this initiative, and his Modernization Act was acted on, I think, with TDOT a couple of days, well, a month ago. So I'm going to introduce TDOT Office of Community Transportation Service Supervisor, Jonathan Russell.
Thank you. Matt and I are going to do a little tag team here. If you would progress to the next slide. The one, we spoke about this before, the Multimodal Access Grant, which is a very popular grant statewide. Hopefully you all applied for that because the notice of intent was due yesterday. So just thanking you all for turning in those applications. Briefly, Matt and I are going to tag team the Transportation Modernization Act. Matt, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Thank you again. So as Mayor Vogel, you alluded to, this was adopted on April 17th, so roughly a month ago. Provided a one-time infusion of about $3.3 billion that would go towards a number of things. You could see from that top call out that the majority of that will go towards improved act acceleration, statewide partnership projects, safety and state of good repair, and economic development. Another, I think you've all heard too, that $300 million of this will go towards your state aid program, and it follows the formulas that were established with the other allocation of the $21 million. I think we have a table that shows the breakdown of how this would be applied, estimated. So Instead of the 21 million, again, we have 321 to establish across the way, and as you can see, it's a pretty substantial amount that the counties will be getting on that. Next slide, I think. Yeah, so what we have to do, I figured this would be a good discussion, talk about next steps now that the act has been put into law and now we are on the clock to put this money to good use. A lot of TDOT officials have mentioned that the idea is to not take that $3 billion and just put it towards projects. This is an opportunity to leverage the $3 billion into much larger amounts to put towards projects and to get the initiatives underway. So a lot of that will be partnerships with you all, and we don't have a lot of that set in place. As you can see, we're kind of at the starting point, but through December of this year, we have a lot of work to do to develop that strategies for moving forward. Next slide, please. So some of the priorities that we have to do, as I mentioned, we have to put these definitions together. We have to look at this new opportunity with choice lanes and how that will be applied across the state. The development of a modernization board, which, for those of you that aren't familiar with that board yet, it's comprised of 5 voting members. One is the governor's appointee, speaker appointees by both the House and the Senate, the governor or the governor's rep, and the TDOT commissioner. That is the board itself, and they will be helping push the decisions for this Modernization Act forward. And then obviously to work with the MPOs to try to discuss partnerships and other opportunities through that Modernization Act. I think that's the last slide that we provided there. So, there are not a lot of answers to your questions at this point yet because of how fresh this is, but if you have questions, I can jot them down and potentially get that to you in a response email. Any questions?
Any questions for Matt? Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, I'm with the town of Nolensville, and I guess my main question, and the rest of you probably already know this, I'm kind of new to this, what can we as small local governments best do to prepare for when that funding becomes available? What should we be working on and what formats?
Are you referring to the state aid or the larger portion?
The larger portion.
Yeah, that is the coordination with the MPOs. I think that would be our first start. We know that this is new and there's a lot of questions that are coming from it, but I think channeling it through the MPO and having a discussion at this level, I think will help with that.
So the more at the local level that we understand all the inner workings of the MPO, the better positioned we will be once the information comes from you?
Yeah, because a lot of these projects are anticipated to flow through the MPO. They'll have to be either put in a tip or, make sure that they're consistent with the plans. But again, this isn't the last time you'll hear about this in this forum.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Anyone else got a question, Jonathan or Matt? Sean shaking his head, yeah. Okay. Yes.
If I might add, anybody who is interested in knowing the positioning of your local priorities within the Regional Transportation Plan or Transportation Improvement Program, that's something we're happy to come meet with you about individually. There's a 5-year update process that we use to update the plan. It's a 25-year horizon on that plan. We'll begin updating that again here shortly to extend the horizon out to 2050. And it's very likely, based on sort of reading between the lines in what Matt is saying, is that they're going to be looking to leverage the $3 billion against projects that are identified in that plan that are struggling to gain enough traction and funding to move forward. And so you've already got projects in the plan. To the extent you want to learn how they got there, how they were evaluated and scored to get to that point so that you can be prepared for the update, we'd be happy to work with you on that.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Has anybody got any questions on that at all now? If not, we'll move to the chair's report. Who fills out this piece of paper that says whatever I want to say? I don't think nobody wants to hear whatever I want to say. But I'm going to ask Mayor Reed, when's the next task force meeting?
We were actually supposed to meet on Friday, and there were some other things that quite a few of us had that we weren't able to meet. So we have some potential dates that we're going to be sending out so people can let us know when we might be able to meet again.
Is the next meeting in Columbia?
I'm hearing that the next meeting is in Columbia.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yes.
Hey, we appreciate you tackling.
And we hope that you'll come join us.
Okay, I'll try. Yeah.
Right.
I ain't at a ribbon cutting somewhere. Yeah.
Or a
appreciate
bridge.
You tackling that, okay? Thank you. I'm going to do the staff report. Sean, you going to take that?
Yeah, there's, well, I want to direct people's attention to the staff report in the packet. This is something new that we have developed to share with you at our meetings, and I think this is a way to help keep track of a lot of, or I guess just track a lot of the things that we're talking about on a monthly basis. Most of this is focused on project delivery information, and so what we have here is kind of the funding obligations targeted for federal fiscal year 2023, the fiscal year that we're currently in. And so we've programmed about $418 million across various funding sources within that year of the TIP. And so far to date, actually this is as of the second quarter, so March 31st, a little bit dated, but about $83 million of that has been obligated towards projects proceeding to NEPA or design or right-of-way or construction. And so that rate is about 20% of where we need to be, or 20% of what we expect, and even though we're about halfway through the year. And so we'd like that obligation rate to be higher across multiple funding programs, but particularly the MPO sub-allocated funding, which are a lot of the funds that we're allocating towards your projects through our surface transportation planning help me out, Anna. There we go, Surface Transportation Block Grant, or our Transportation Alternative Program, or the CRISA funds. And so, that I think has been particularly low, as you can see from the obligation rates. And so this is something that, we'll be continuing to work on, and we'll be coordinating a meeting with TDOT local programs and checking on the status of some of these projects, and then also probably bringing in some of the local governments to discuss projects that might not be moving as fast as they should be through the process. We've also listed underneath that this is more than just the MPO sub-allocated funds, but this is more focused on the locally managed projects. So you may have a CMAQ grant that TDOT awarded you, or a Transportation Alternatives Program grant that TDOT awarded you, or you may have sub-allocated MPO funds assigned to your project. So this just tracks a lot of those projects that you all are implementing through the process, and some of the actions associated with those, whether the project was, got notice to proceed to spend the design funds or right away, or actually is moving on to construction. So let us know if you have any questions on that. We're interested in, feedback that you may have, or things that you'd also like to see in addition to what we have here.
What is the date on the advancement list?
So on the advancement list, this actually goes through May 3rd for those locally managed projects, and so gone a little bit further out on that. And
May 3rd?
May 3rd, yeah. So you'll see that the regional transportation data acquisition, that we set aside funds for CRISA towards that effort. That funding was actually, we got the notice to proceed, so now we can proceed with acquiring a data platform for the region. So that was a significant one. We also had a Metro Nashville project get the notice to proceed for right-of-way. So we've had some progress since the rate that you see above over the month of April and May. And then also note on the next page, we've got, I know we forget about some of these projects that are in previous tips and they move on to construction, and construction may take 2 to 4 years. And so we just wanted to highlight some of those projects that were recently completed, probably or likely programmed in previous tips, but either were recently completed or are currently under construction, and then just kind of the expected completion on some of those projects is contained in there. A lot of this information on status and expected completion is derived from TDOT's website that you've likely browsed. Region 3 Transportation Projects has good information on not only the purpose and need of the project, but the timeline of events and where it is in construction. So want to have that information just readily available to you all and what applies to our region. So we'll try and continue to keep this updated. We can also build it out with additional information based on ideas that you all have. So just please reach out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Sean, I'm not totally understanding what I'm looking at here, because the number, the fact that 0.03% of the funds have been obligated is concerning, because the federal fiscal year ends at the end of September, so a year is going to be gone, and not much has been obligated, right? So obligated for y'all means that it's in our system and it's applied to a project. Y'all are going to, everything's moving forward. So that's concerning that's the obligation rate at the moment through the end of March. So help me understand that through the end of May, authorize project, design it. What does that mean? The action has been, what action is that? Is that something that has happened at TDOT, something that's happened in the federal finance system? What is that action?
So that action is when TDOT notifies the local government that they have notice to proceed to right-of-way or construction or to, implement their project. So that's the date of the correspondence with them, and then they can proceed to that next phase of work.
So that means these activities have been obligated by us? So does that have an impact on your obligations at the top?
Yeah, so that's why the dates are different, is that we've got more information on some of these that we are privy to the email correspondence with the locals, but we don't have the full obligation for all of these programs out to May 3rd.
May I ask why?
We get a quarterly obligation report from TDOT for all of these, and then we do our best to keep track of all the locally managed projects through the email correspondence, but we're not getting everything.
Okay, so I will say this. I don't know why TDOT is doing it only on a quarterly basis, but that information is available on a daily basis. So I would strongly recommend that we get them on the same schedule so that it's an equal representation, because we can run a report. I can report right now and tell you what's been obligated in the federal system, and that's the same system that TDOT has access to. So in order to be fair to the board, I think it's important that we're talking apples and apples. So with respect, I don't think our dates ought to be different. So we can work with TDOT to ensure that you have the dates that, the information that you need. Quarterly is easier, I totally understand that. But having our dates be off, I don't think it's fair, because it's not telling the same story.
Yeah, I think that's something that we'd like to strive for, is maybe moving from quarterly to monthly so that we can give you the latest and greatest.
Well, it's for the board.
Yeah, I think we have access to FEMAS now, which is like
that's the federal funding process, right? That's our accounting system. It's FEMAS, FMIS, for whoever's taking notes.
But working towards maybe getting this on a more frequent basis, I think we can make that specific request.
Mayor Carr.
So I want to understand this clearly. You're able to provide this information on a daily basis. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. How much funding has been obligated, meaning tied specifically to projects?
Right. I think I understood that. Thank you. You're telling me you're providing the same information on a quarterly basis. Is that correct?
We're getting an update quarterly of the summary of all the obligations.
So did I say that incorrectly?
We're reporting what TDOT gives us quarterly. Pam is suggesting TDOT could give that out more frequently than that so that we can give you more.
That's what I understood was the suggestion. My question is, why? Why can we not have this information on a much more frequent basis? Is there a reason?
I don't think so.
Thank you.
I think it's just a matter of requesting it. That might go beyond my time here at TDOT, but maybe quarterly was a agreed upon standard to do that. But yeah, I mean, it is not because we have not allowed anything more than quarterly or less than quarterly. I think it's just a matter of a request.
So I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, so you have access to FEMAS? You have read access to FEMAS? Meaning you can look at it, what it says?
Right.
Then you can run your own report. If you don't know how to do that, we can teach you how to do that.
We're trying to get familiar with the system.
Not a problem. I'm just offering. We can teach you how to run the report.
This is a new item.
So you have read access to our financial management system, meaning the NPO staff can look in and see what's going on at any given time. Now, it's a system that only the feds can love, okay? But we can teach you how to read it. We can teach you how to run the reports because you have read access. You can't change anything, but you can look at it. So we can teach you how to do that.
Well, and let me just clarify. This is anytime anybody needs access to obligation information, as Matt said, that can be made available upon request. What we're looking at in the packet has never been shown before at one of these board meetings. This is an effort by Sean to at least give you all periodic updates on obligation rates. I completely agree with Ms. Kortenbrock. It needs to be more recent than that, and the dates should be aligned. We talked about that internally at the staff meeting, but there's been more activity since the last quarterly report we got from TDOT, and we wanted to share that with you. This being a new item, yeah, I agree. And we can work with TDOT to get more regular printouts. We would love to have the training. I think it's new access. I don't think it's anything that we're going to be confident extracting data for right now to give it to the board. So I think we'd still want TDOT to verify the information since they're the ones that are managing it on their side with you.
Okay. Thank you, Pam, for bringing that up. And I got a question somewhere. Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
So I do really appreciate the discussion because, again, as being someone that's new to these meetings, having discussion facilitated, I think, helps each of us learn. When we talk about obligation rate and the percentages over the last several years, am I understanding that correct? That, like, essentially we're leaving money on the table that could have been used?
It's not leaving money on the table. It's not putting it on projects. It's just sitting, waiting to be applied to projects.
Does that slow the rate that projects get completed?
Yes,
at that point?
and the money does have an expiration. Right? It's 4 years. So I mean that's the other thing that I can offer to come. We're happy to come and educate y'all about all of this. So if the board would like to, FHWA can come in and give a quick overview of the federal funding process and how it works and what these terms mean, because again, some states use encumbered. Some of y'all may be familiar with the term encumbered. Obligation is a federal term. So some of these terms are used interchangeably. Some of them mean the same thing, some of them don't. So if it pleases the board, we can come in and talk about how the money works, right? And how obligation rates work, how we work with the state, how we work with y'all, and show you the balances, and we can do all that, whatever the board would like.
And I do want to add that the task force that Mayor Reed discussed is one of the tools that we're using to help fix this rate and to get that number a lot higher.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of Matt's comment, it's, the task force has allowed us to dive into, this is a very complex issue with a lot of different players, and diving into some of those challenges to then come up with recommendations on how to move forward and really get this obligation rate much higher.
And I think when we're looking at, it's obligation rates across the board, but when you look at the NPO sub-allocated funds, we honestly have no explanation at this point to why it's so low. The CRISA funds for the data acquisition spiked that rate, and that's not what should be happening here when we've got construction projects on the books. So that's a conversation that we started with Matt this past Monday to get some good explanation, because these are lower than normal, and the normal numbers already drove us to creating a project delivery task force to address a problem with obligation. So I don't know if it's the pipeline as Improve Act projects, or that the locally managed projects aren't just getting to the next milestone quick enough, but that'll be something that we'll need to explain to the board sooner than later.
Mayor Reed?
I just want to circle back until we can get educated on the new program. We're going to get monthly updates rather than quarterly. Is monthly what we need?
I think that'd be a good
Yeah.
start.
Okay, then I would say the board is requesting that information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mayor Schuman?
Just one other thing. So it's a 4-year. So these funds have an expiration date of 4 years. Okay. So when you look at the obligations, everything's kind of bunched up together. Could you actually break it out into when these funds came, so you actually know what's in that last year? Because if it's not spent in that or obligated in that last 4 years, does it go away? Does it go back to the federal government?
So the way TDOT manages this, and Matt, please chime in if I describe this incorrectly, but our understanding up until yesterday was that the state is managing like the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program at the aggregate level. They're always spending the oldest money first, right? So they're actually preventing the lapsing of any of these funds. And in fact, usually Tennessee is drawing down additional funds that aren't being spent by other states. So they do a really good job of managing the money despite the fact that we have low obligation rates, particularly on locally managed projects across Tennessee. That's the purpose of the Project Delivery Task Force, is to figure out why when a local government is managing projects, including Metro Nashville, but not the only community around the table that has a hard time getting it through the process, what is getting in the way on the speed of obligation relative to state-managed projects. Questions like, should the state be managing certain types of projects that locals are currently managing, is something that needs to be answered. Are there only certain types of projects that locals should manage? Or are there something embedded in the TDOT local programs process that is secondary to the state-managed projects? They've been very open and honest with us about how they view project delivery internally, and I think that's getting to the heart of the question about why obligation rates are so low.
But it sounds like there's lots of issues that are being looked at, which is fine. I think the question was, when I heard the 4 years, I want to make sure that we're not losing money.
That's for STBG. We do come up on some grant programs like the Transportation Alternatives Program or the Highway Improvement Program, where TDOT doesn't have that opportunity to spend oldest funds fast enough to prevent lapse. And so you'll see TIP amendments before those deadlines to get that money moved to projects that can get it obligated before the deadline. We haven't allowed any funds to lapse, but it is something that we have to periodically address in almost an emergency situation to prevent that from happening.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Michael is correct that the state does watch that very closely. We watch it with them. We haven't lapsed any money, so that is true. Everything that and we do spend together with the state and with all of the MPOs and around the state, spending the oldest money first to exactly prevent that. But your initial question is, can you see what's going to happen and when? Yes. The answer is yes. That same financial management system can give you that report as well.
Thank you, Pam. Good discussion. I think Sean's got one more slide.
One thing I also want to draw attention to, a lot of the grants that Pam had mentioned, we have posted on our website, gnrc.org /grants, and this has probably almost a dozen different grant opportunities now, and most of them are in the transportation realm. Feel free to look through that. I think as more and more grants became available, we had to move from just sending out the follow-up email with a bulleted list of grants to moving them to this site. And so this has the links, not only the brief description of the NOFOs that have come out, but it also has links to those pages on the respective agency sites like FHWA or FTA or EPA. So check that out, and we'll try and keep that up to date as opportunities become available. Last thing I just want to mention is upcoming meetings, and so we're alternating. Next month we'll have the regional council body meet in this building as well, adopting the annual budget and work program, election of officers and mayoral appointments, and then presentation on the GNRC's digital literacy program. In July, as we mentioned, Transportation Policy Board will be meeting in here. We'll be adopting TIP amendments, and then we also will have the Transportation Planning Work Program scheduled for adoption. And then toward the end of the summer in August, Regional Council Body will meet again, and tentative topics for that include Brownfields grant program discussion from TDEC and focusing on solid waste strike force. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Good discussion. We seem like we've learned a lot, maybe getting some things to happen quicker. I'm looking anxious toward that solid waste strike force report. Any more business coming from the board? Let me say something that let's pray for our seniors. All of us has invested got a lot of grandkids and kids that's worked hard. They're our future. Let's pray for our seniors. They tossed their caps this coming week and for safety. This month's also Mental Health Month. We all know people that's needs help, and we need to be recognizing that. And this week's also National and Law Enforcement Week. I know we're having a program tomorrow recognizing fallen law enforcement officers. So anytime you see them law enforcement people, thank them for what they do, because they do have a tough job. And I'm going to ask all of you to be safe over the holiday, and appreciate you being here. This board does a lot of work, and we're all got the same goal. We're fighting over the same dollar, but we got the same goal. So I've learned a lot since I've been here, and I appreciate the task force for what Mayor Reed and them's doing. Okay, Mayor Carr, you want to do the last motion? So be it. Yes. Leave your name tags on that thing.